Well, that looks like Miss Nathan again.
No, I'm here.
Oh, what's
Hello.
up, man? Hey, what's up? Good to see you, brother. How's everything?
Everything's
Good day, Nathan.
groovy. Hello, Helena. Good to see you.
Groovy.
Good to see you,
What's
Haunted.
up, Nathan?
Groovy, is it? What's news?
Wow, if Nathan showed up, that would have been crazy. So what was it like for you, Nathan, when your first? You've had a couple of big outings. I think the British people are leading the charge in. If we're doing like
I
a,
don't know.
I was listening to Critical earlier, and I was thinking exactly the same thing. You know, it doesn't matter how good your event is, you're going to get naysayers, critical people that just say it's normally exactly like you said. It's the people that aren't putting their face out there. You know, the nameless trolls that will criticize it and say that it wasn't good for whatever reason.
How do you
Preset being one of the examples. So he did an expose video on the Leamington meet and was like, "They're by an obelisk." It's like it's been there since the 1800s in the park we were in. I didn't put it there. You know?
oh, that's full conspiratard right there.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
I'm grateful. You know, it's like thanks for the advert because that's really all you need on YouTube. I've been trying to explain this to Patricia Steer for probably 2 yees. But you know, that's what you need. You need people to talk about you. And as much as it might seem critical, you know, when they're saying, "Oh, you could have got the sound better," it's like no, all they're doing is promoting you, talking about you, getting your name out there, talking about whatever it is that they're talking about. And it seems negative when it's about you, but 99% of the time, when you, me, or anyone else hears somebody talking about Patricia, for example, it goes in one ear and out the other. You listen and are interested in the moment, but it's not like that cements some sort of feeling or opinion. But for the conspiratards, they'll flock to it and think it's true, you know, and just take it as read because it's been on a video.
But Nathan, I guess I would ask you this: I've seen some people in the community I respect fall down that hole, man. I mean, even just recently, I people that like I respect, and then they'll do something, and you're just like, well, you know, we talked last week, and you had a good level of discernment, and now you just threw it all out the window. I mean, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I think it's because as a flat earther, you come to the conclusion pretty quickly that you've been subject to a huge amount of deception, and it's paradigm shifting, it's mind altering, and it does leave you in a kind of fractured state, even if you're reasonably level headed. So most of the time, you'll display your normal level headed discernment, and then something will trigger you because you think, well, no, I've been deceived before. I can be fooled. So then when a normal, reasonable piece of information comes to you, you go, well, that might be false. Let's look into the alternatives. And then you look into the alternatives, and certainly in Flat Earth, there's plenty. There'll be someone else saying something completely contrary that might make sense to you, and that's all it needs. And then you'll go with that narrative. You know,
Well, I'm learning a big lesson, and what I'm learning is I'm just going to stick to my own kind. That's been my lesson in all of this. Like the sieve I was talking about before, I just couldn't be bothered anymore. Couldn't be bothered trying to convince people. It's a lot easier to just find people that are on your frequency, on your level, and you can get a lot more work done that way than just all these tripping over. They're putting their feet out all the time, so you trip over. The crab's in the bucket, like the critical was saying the other day.
Yeah, they should be concerned about their own story.
Yeah, luckily I'm finding that there are others like myself, which is kind of rare. So we're all a bunch of unicorns together.
Yeah. It's just it's just I don't care if it's from a faceless person online, but I've had people in person at meetups pulling some of this naysaying type crap. And I really just don't know what the best way to go forward, and because it gets to you when you have people that are second guessing every move you make. It can get to you after a while. You know, I don't know what the best way to go about it is, really. Other than
like you were saying the other day, you just keep going. Like you said, you just keep going.
Keep doing you.
Yeah. Next.
Keep doing you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I think you're right, Helena, I know what you mean when you say we're a bunch of unicorns. But by the same token, there's going to be people who are in your immediate social circle that you may not even know in 5 years, 10 years from now. And that being the case, you've got to kind of, when you're pressing forward, think, well, yes, you're trying to appeal to these people. Yes, you're trying to get them to come to your meetup, but there's a good chance that you may not know them in a few years' time. Therefore, who cares what their opinion is? It's like, well, you know, I'll keep doing this for me. And if other people come to that, then that's wonderful. But I'm not doing it for you, you know, you specifically as an individual. It's not yours, it's mine. And I'm going to embrace it. And if you choose not to, that's your loss. So in the case of the people that didn't come to the sound guy or, you know, went away and just moaned about it, that was what they chose to put their energy into. They chose to put their energy into making a video, which is like, well, you know, you could have put the exact same energy into making whatever you were moaning about actually work in the moment. But people don't appreciate the moment. They don't realize how important the moment is. And that you can do things, huge things, important things right now in the moment, but people choose to look to others. Why isn't the sound working properly? It's like, well, get over there and have a look. You know?
You just told me you were doing it.
To tell you the truth, it wasn't even that bad for him.
Yeah, no, it's
you know, the person we're talking about had a screen set up and a projector, and their sound was coming over a sound system. I don't know what else they expected.
I think Nathan brought it up perfectly. We could have had the Ritz-Carlton prepared for them, and they'd still have a problem with it, some people. So
yeah, that's usually what bad musicians do. They blame the sound. They blame it on, that was the sound, man. That's all it was. It's like, no, you sucked.
Yeah.
You know, or your confidence was at a low or something like that.
It's like my comedy routine didn't hit. It's like, well, the audience was too drunk. You know what I mean? They were drinking too much. You know what I mean? It's like what do they call that? There's a word for
anything to not have to take responsibility for it.
And you're always going to suck. If you don't take responsibility, you're always going to suck. You're not going to grow. If you can't go, actually, I was really shit. I did a really bad job, and own it. And then what happens? You go, well, I want to do this better, so you get better.
Well,
and I think I won't speak for everybody.
Just while you've just said it, Helena, because you hit the right word perfectly, because responsibility isn't necessarily the correct word, because there were people who were organising the event that you could say you were responsible, which is what they've done. They've pointed the finger and gone, you're responsible for making this work. And the word you said it once is ownership. You take ownership of the problem as opposed to taking responsibility, because, there's going to be somebody in charge that's actually responsible for making it work. But it's like at work, I'm autonomous at work. I'm out in a van, I'm out on my own, and there's no one else to blame. So if there's a problem, what I have to do and do is take ownership of that problem. In other words, I say, this is my problem. As a customer's concerned, I'll sometimes tell them, this is my fault. And it isn't, you know, but it means that you calm down that person, you take ownership of the problem, and then you normally resolve it on the spot, because taking ownership means taking control. So if that person who said, oh, the sound hasn't got this, it's like, well, take ownership of that problem. And then once you have ownership, it's your problem. You can resolve it. You can then come to a resolve that you're satisfied with, and you don't have to look to anybody. And it's perfectly within 99% of people's capability to take ownership of most problems on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings me back to unicorns. Perhaps that way of thinking just isn't for everybody. And there are some of us that get it and are moving up. I mean, with being an individual, that you can get things done, and if you like that, the way you've just explained in a great way, and you see results, and then you start meeting other people that are on that level, and imagine the work you can do together when you got someone else that has figured it out too, so you can create more together, and then we can create more. But that's why a lot of people are being left behind. They're not getting past their little egos, their little victim state of minds. No one's really getting anywhere. And I need movement and creativity and finding other people that also get that. It's like, oh, well, see us all later, because we're moving. We're flying. So turkeys, goodbye.
Turkeys.
Yeah. You see it on YouTube.
Because they can't fly.
I was just going to say, you see it on YouTube too. You see people who say, if only I'd have got that shout out on Globebusters, I'd have more subscribers now. It's like, why are you pointing at them and their popularity to bolster your own? It's like, go out, promote yourself, do more work, then you will become more popular. You don't need to point at these people and say, well, if only they would have given me more shout outs. If only they'd have promoted me. If only they'd have talked about my latest concept. If only they'd have talked about the experiment we're doing. Ronnie and Jason are doing this right now. Why haven't you paid attention to my experiment? It's like, well, because I went to your advert for me where you said you were a shill and you detailed nothing about your experiment. So you had a missed opportunity. You know, I was there watching the video. It had my name in the title. Obviously, I'm going to watch it. You know, and all I got to do was say thanks for the advert. I didn't say, wow, that sounds like a really good experiment. It's like crappy promotion.
I'm sure it's a technique too. You know, like I'm going to be putting a big video out. Let me drum up some activity, some attention by calling out Nathan Oakley or calling out Mark Sargent.
Yeah.
Like, look at how many people know who MGTV is now.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about that guy now because he took a cheap shot and like took the easy road. But when it comes to like sound performance, like musicians and stuff, I learned all that I know from not having the ability to make it, not having like a good sound system, not having any tools to do it right with.
Yeah.
So that's when you learn how to make do with what you have. And we didn't have much. The sound guys didn't really know. They weren't really inspired, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, with the right microphones and gear, sure, they could make it happen. But we made do with what we had. And I still don't see when did that guy complain after, like during the show?
No, not a single concern was ever brought to my attention.
And what was his main complaint?
That it was, you know, that there were problems. The sound wasn't good, the venue wasn't good, blah 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 blah. But he never brought a single concern to me. They never said, "Hey, can you help us with this?" I must have asked them 12 different times to set up, you know, in a different spot and go on and make an announcement, and they kept disappearing and leaving. So, you know, it is what it is. You know, you want to make a video complaining, or you want to get your hands dirty. What do you want to do?
I told him too, it would be cool to have the projection on anybody playing live. You know, like have it set up so it was like the band was the screen, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way it was set up was a little weird. It wasn't how I would set it up, but the following day, we got in there and moved shit around.
Yeah.
And bam, there we go. There it is.
I can say from personal experience that your event was a success, an absolute, definite success. And it's the first event you'd put on. The first event I put on, I had technically one person arrive. Martin I knew anyway, and he kind of was not co-arranging it, but, you know, we were arranging it together. Yes, I suppose co-arranging it. But I was publicising it, putting out video log after video log after video log about meeting up at the Mapper Monday. One guy turned up. I counted that as a success. You know, I spun it positively, and I was like, first ever Flat Earth meetup in 100 years plus. Wonderful. And it's just all about sort of positive reinforcement. And I didn't come away from that going, what a disappointment. Nobody came. You know, one guy, not at all. It's like that was a meetup. People actually pressed the flesh.
If one person told one person about the Flat Earth, this whole idea, this whole like
pay it forward with Flat Earth,
or the equivalent would be, hey, you know, you should really start thinking critically about things these days. You know, you don't really know what's real and what's not real because special effects have gotten so good. You know, well, what are you talking about? You know, I take things seriously. What do you mean? Well, I'm just saying, you know, take a second look at things. Whether you think, hey, the Earth's a ball to you, that's fine. Okay, whatever. But for your own good, take another look at things. If that could get through to at least one person for every person that's already got an idea that's sort of taking themselves, respecting themselves a little bit more, then that goes a long way. You know, I took one person at work, and they now have looked into the Flat Earth, and we talked about it once. And I don't want to say I've turned him or convinced him, but he's definitely more aware than he was, and he's hip to it. That's good enough for me. You know, if everybody did that.
It's the hardest thing, though. That is I mean, you say if people just looked at things more critically, But that's the paradigm shift. That's the mind-altering break and fracture that once they do that, even if they realize a little bit that, I just think about people like my dad. He's very old-fashioned, and he accepts everything that's on the news. It's all real. Why would you ever think that anything would be a lie? If it got to the point where I could convince him to say, well, just look at this a little bit critically. Do you really think that shooting happened? What's your evidence for it? Just based on what's on the telly? Because that's pretty poor. At that point, if he was to go, you know what, you're right, that would be, he'd be in a different world immediately.
Yeah.
A completely different world, because everything around him from then on in is potentially fraudulent, lies, deception, conspiracy.
Yeah, it's like one small step, but it means a lot.
Exactly. And the other end of that journey from that one small step is what you were describing earlier, where men are women and women are men, and everyone becomes Captain Hearsay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's about respecting your own knowledge, about figuring things out for yourself.
And if I can add to that by also saying, so your father, for instance, and obviously nothing personal to your dad, because I know plenty of people like that, but it also means you have to face yourself. If you're willing to go there in your mind and realize you've been deceived, it also means you have to have a really good look at yourself as well. And that's what's difficult, excuse me, for most people, is having a really good look at themselves and knowing who they are. And most of us don't know who we are, and we don't want to have to face that reality either. And flat Earth's got a big part to do with that.
Exactly. But most people don't want to look at themselves because the reality is that they're a monster. Most people are monsters. Not most people. That's probably an exaggeration. A lot of people are monsters.
A lot. We'll say
and
a lot.
if they have to look internally, suddenly they have to appreciate that monster and either do something about it or live with it. And neither are appealing prospects to people who are monsters. They're the people who want to point the fingers at somebody else. And I take that as the biggest positive thing Flat Earth has brought to me. The ability to look inwards, the ability to appreciate my own abilities, the ability to appreciate my own discernment, is for me the biggest plus. But to a lot of people, it's the worst thing they ever want. The last thing they want to do is start looking internally, because they'd see this horrible, nasty reflection looking back when they stand in front of that mirror.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got spawn climbing all over me.
I think that ability to play devil's advocate with yourself, I think that's a rare trait. So, like somebody will hear a new argument and they might look at it from their point of view, but they can't do the reverse. They can't play the prosecutor interrogating themselves and look at it that way. And I think that's the problem, is more people need to be able to play devil's advocate with themselves. I watch some people, like I watch Kyle McDonald, and he's like iterating things like battles that I have in my own mind, and that's why it's so interesting to me. He's talking about false positives and all these different things, and I'm like, wow, he's articulating what the battles that I'm having in my own mind, and I don't see that enough with people. I don't see people challenging themselves enough, I guess.
There's a certain type of person, and I'm sure Helena will speak to this, that their entire life is a battle to suppress that monster. I mean, the narcissism that Helena and I have discussed, is the antithesis of what we're describing. To look internally and realize what oneself is the whole point of the construct that a narcissist creates around them. The whole point of them lying and deceiving and triangulating, that whole purpose is to stop them having to look at what they actually are, which is usually a pretty insignificant nothing.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, right on. And this is where this flat Earth reality comes in. It's going to be very difficult for people to process on so many levels. And we are going through some sort of energetic corridor, I believe, and there's a lot of evidence for it, that there are massive changes coming. And if people aren't on that self-discovery and realizing who they truly are, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're going to be in a lot of trouble, and there's a lot that's coming. There's a lot that's coming, and I think people like ourselves, I won't speak for you guys, but we'll be. I'll be ready. I'm ready for the avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about intellectual honesty. Intellectual honesty, just like curious. Like when I started this hangout earlier, I brought up Curious Life, his video on it was called No Chemtrails on a Flat Earth.
Yeah.
And he just basically goes off on these wacky chemtrail videos where no one really has any proof of any of this stuff. It's like, yeah, I see that stuff in the sky too, but I don't really know what it is. And it just, the evidence is really thin, but he's not even making a point about chemtrails, not saying like, hey, I don't believe he's not challenging the idea.
He's challenging the investigation.
Yeah, he's just saying, go about it your own way. You know, think for yourself. Don't just because you see a YouTube video that shows a guy screaming and yelling about chemtrails.
Yeah.
Do your own research. You know, nobody ever does. And when you do your own research, you come to a different conclusion every time. When you're the one who goes to a library and picks up a book on cartography or American history or English history or European history or something like that, when you find yourself alone reading that book, looking at it, trying to figure things out your own way, doing your own experiment, it's a different situation. You know, for the longest time, I was just watching YouTube videos until I started applying these ideas in real life. And it's a different situation when you can hear it coming out of your own mouth. And then when you hear someone else saying what you've said and you look at them like, fuck, that sounds fucking retarded.
Yeah. It's like that journey.
You know, like,
you have to go through that journey.
I've seen people on Facebook trying to argue flat earth to other people, like spitting out exactly what Eric Dubay told them to say, except they're getting it all wrong. They're mixing up the words.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah. Like there's a person in chat right now talking about he wants us to prove the flat earth to him because he doesn't believe it. It's like, I can't do that. Nobody can do that.
Oh,
Nobody
now he's
can do
playing the
that to you.
victim. You know what I find so funny? Like they insult you and then they turn around and go, why is everyone being so rude to me? Like, go home. Go cry in your water crackers. Wife or your kids or something, for God's sakes.
I know, it's like you can be a nice person, but it's like something's not sincere there.
It's like, prove the earth is
Something-
flat. It's like nobody proved to you that it was a ball. First
I was
of all,
about to say exactly that. There's no necessity
I
to
know.
prove what is the starting point, and this is conceded by both heliocentric believers and obviously flat earthers. The starting point, what we observe in our day-to-day life, is flat. It's obvious and observable. Now that's the starting point. The end point is proof from NASA that we're on a spinning sphere by use of CGI bullshit. Now, once you shatter the credibility of somebody who has the benchmark proof for us living on a bloody globe, you then have to go back to scratch. So your starting point is flat. So prove to me beyond that we're not on a flat plane. And what do we get? Oh, well, we've got a second celestial point. Yeah, I know, I've seen it. Wowee. That, when I saw it, and I was a globehead at the time, didn't make me think, wow, this is such an amazing proof that we live on a sphere. It just didn't cross my mind. I showed my wife. We sat down with the iPad and looked at the south constellations, and we're like, it was really romantic. But not at one point did I go, man, it's so nice to have this amazing globe proof.
It's like, oh, well, we can relax now. We're good. We're good.
Yeah. This is, oh man, I got here into the south of the equator, and I didn't dream that I would get this amazing proof of something I already knew. You know, it's nonsense. That's the best you can do.
The best logical fallacy that I've found, and I've had this happen. So I'll get somebody to tell me, I'm like, so you know that NASA faked the moon landing. So like, yeah, I know, it was bullshit. And then I'm like, but you trust them on everything else. They're like, yeah, well, why would they lie? And I'm just holding my head in my hands. I'm like, that's like me finding out that my neighbor broke into my house last week and stole $5,000. And then I'm going on vacation. Here, neighbor, will you watch my house for me? Will you just check up on the cats? You know what I mean? Like, that's the same reasoning.
It's
So
credibility.
It's
It
like
comes down to credibility.
oh,
Once NASA lost their credibility for me, it's like, I don't believe a word they say. I mean, Easter's got it right. You know, he's looking at it in terms that I can completely relate to, and credibility is one of them. Once, if you're in a courtroom setting, once you are caught lying, that's it.
Yep.
You're no longer credible.
Yep.
End of story. NASA are in that position for me. When people say, "Oh well, you're just anomaly hunters," you're looking. It's like, no, you know, I've worked on sets. I've worked in the theatre. I've seen how they build things. I've worked with models. That's what we're looking at. It's now obvious. You know, it's really, really obvious. There's no way I can go back to seeing it how you as a globehead see it. You see it as real. I don't and can't ever see it as real because it isn't.
Once you know the mechanics of the fourth wall, you're not going to be able to walk away from that, you know?
Yeah. Once you know how the magic trick's done, the magic trick no longer has its allure. Once you know the rings have got a secret gate in them, when you see someone smash those two rings together and they've gone through, you know that that's not true.
Yeah.
You know, when you see the guy who's sat levitating and then you see him set up and he's got this magic seat and the stick that he's holding up is actually a great big support mechanism with a chair attached to it. Once you've seen that, you no longer think the guy is levitating, and you never will.
Yeah. You never believe in that Indian yogi on the side of the street again. Never happened.
Same with the perspective trick. You see someone who's drawing a perspective trick in chalk on the pavement, and as you walk up to it, you go, "Oh my God, I'm going to fall in a big pit." And then you walk around it, see it from the other angle. In other words, you peer behind the curtain and see how the trick is done. And at that point, you can go back and see the trick looking realistic. You know, I can still suspend disbelief when I watch NASA stuff, but it has the same mentality applied as watching Star Wars now. It's no different to me in terms of how I have to suspend disbelief. You know, I have to put myself in a certain mindset that most people, they're only suspending disbelief with Star Wars about the ships and the lightsabers and the Force. It's like, no. A lot of those things are based on religion. Those are real stories that they've transposed into science fiction, and the premise is your world. All of it needs to be suspended as fiction. All of it is a suspension of disbelief. But most people will retain the galaxy far, far away bit. You know, it opens up within a galaxy far, far away because that's to set you in the current paradigm that your actual world is based around. And it's false. It's not true. You know, that's no different to watching a NASA animation with the globe. They're both fiction.
Yeah. They just take one from NASA and they believe it because it says NASA, and I mean, at least I can't follow that logic of reasoning to the people that are like, yeah, they faked they faked the moon landing, but that's because they really went there in secret. And I just bury it's like we see air bubbles in space, and then all the UFO conspirator channels, they're like, see, proof of a UFO, and we're like, no, they're bubbles. It's a neutral buoyancy pool. I'm sorry. You know, and that wrench that you thought was on Mars, that is a wrench because it's on Devon Island in Canada on Earth. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, I don't know.
Yeah, the Alex Jones line is just complete horseshit. You know, when I first heard that, oh right, there's a secret program, and that's the one they're not telling us about. They had to fake it because they were in competition with the Russians and they needed to prove it. But it's like, no. So you're essentially back to conceding that they have deceived you. They've lied through their back teeth, but it was needed. It's like you're a slave. You're a complete slave.
You know what that's like? That's like the wife that makes excuses for why her husband beats her. That's the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they call it the
enabling.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, Stockholm syndrome, battered wife syndrome.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's the same line of thinking. They're going to defend why NASA has to deceive them. Well, they deceived us, but it was for our own good because they've really got a secret program, and we can't let the Russians get that secret technology. So they really have our best interests at heart. That's why they lied to us. It's like, oh wow, that is some mental gymnastics there, buddy. That is some serious mental gymnastics. Oh my God.
And NASA isn't helping itself out at all.
Yeah.
You know, with these retarded videos they keep putting out, and you know, whether it's the ISS or SpaceX putting out videos did you see the last pencil?
Oh God.
The rocket landing thing?
Oh, God. They're
I couldn't
getting
believe
worse.
it blacked out. And they said it this time. They said, "Oh, what do you know? It blacked out again."
Oh.
I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Do you know what's weird though?
I thought it was a joke video.
I was really into gaming. I'm sitting in front of a gaming PC right now. And what's weird to me is that with the $2,000 computer sitting in front of me, I can make better CGI than NASA could. So my question is why are they so shoddy? Why would videos be
Because they don't
getting out?
care.
No,
They don't
no.
care.
That's not
I
true.
don't care.
That's not true. That's not true. Go and watch Dilly Gill's videos. Right. So Dilly Gill is exposing how they've managed to fake what they're faking. And I'll try and keep this brief because there's four of us. But there's he's got, I'll break this down in a fairly concise timeline. So you've got the 0G plane that is the shuttle going up and filming what happens when something is in free fall, which is their stick, their line for what is 0G. You're falling continually around the Earth. Or what they've done is they've performed parabolic maneuvers in the shuttle and they've filmed it all and then mapped it all in CGI. And the way Dilly Gill describes it is NASA are absolutely on the cutting edge of cinematography. Not space travel, cinematography. That's why we've got Barry Lyndon, the film, using NASA lenses. You know, they're borrowing this technology from NASA. You know, they've got the best kit when it comes to faking stuff and filming stuff. So they film it, map it, and then later they put it into post-production CGI. This is before the what we have now, where you can do it literally in real time when you get all these boxes and blocking crap over it. But back in the day, they used to do it in post-production. They'd present a studio audience who were talking on a live link with a TV, you know, presenter and an actual television, tiny television, showing what NASA are doing live, in quotes, to the audience, right? Now, they're on a sound stage. They're on a set somewhere on high wires, but there's two camera angles. One that's presented to the live studio audience while they're talking in the link up to NASA on the ISS or whatever, or Space Lab. The other is filmed at a slightly higher angle and does take into the shot the ceiling with all the high wires. They then take that second view and put it into post-production, edit out the ceiling, and you've got the magical, really sharp, high-definition, crisp pictures of people floating. And to the audience, you've got the slightly lower angle with the ceiling obscured in totally shit resolution. They are not close enough to the screen to discern it, and they can't see it in high enough resolution to see that they're just holding, you know, whatever, a wooden box rather than a microphone. You know, it's just a prop that's going to be edited out in post-production and put into high-quality CGI. Cut to today, and they can do that live in real time, and you see the mistakes where they're looking across at the camera because they've, you know, chucked a microphone to the other guy, but the guy hasn't let it go yet, and he's going to catch it because he's expecting it because they've rehearsed it, but he hasn't let it go, you know, and the CGI guy doesn't know what to do, and you see these errors in real time now. When it was done in post-production, it was very difficult to spot if you didn't know what they were doing, and you wouldn't, because how are you going to know? You know, Jurassic Park's just come out of the cinema. Everyone's being wowed by what looks like animatronics, and it's CGI. You know, nobody's appreciating this. But NASA are 10 years ahead of, at the time, Jurassic Park with their CGI. That's who's taking the lead. I get to my point now. Sorry, that was a long-winded introduction to say why they're not just being lazy. What they're actually doing is playing they're not overplaying their hand. So if you start having Star Wars battles in space and going to great efforts to make it look dramatic, then you're more likely to make mistakes. If you just have a 0G meal, really basic, a live link up, an interview, they do a spin, it's really simple stuff, and they're keeping their cards reasonably close to their chest, not overplaying their hand. They don't want to make it look too dramatic. So it's not laziness, far from it. They are definitely on the cutting edge of cinematography.
I understand how they do it, augmented reality CGI, HoloLenses. I understand the tech behind it, and I understand, like, the reason we've never seen, in every sci-fi movie you will ever see, you will always see a shot of an astronaut going into an airlock, depressurizing the airlock, leaving the airlock, floating around, coming back in. Now, you'll never see that from NASA. You'll never see a depressurization, repressurization sequence. Now, I would argue because they can't do it. But my question would be is, now I can get the live errors and it's done live and that's why an error gets through. But why are they letting things through like a guy that's obviously on a harness that we can see? Why is that video even being let out? Like, when it seems like they're not even checking it. Their own
It's not.
video.
I'll tell you why. Because to them, when you're producing this stuff, it's all on harnesses. So you're not going to be looking for that one error that happens to
Okay.
blatantly show that it's on harnesses. If it's all that way, they're trying to make everything look like it's really floating in space. But occasionally, one of them just isn't convincing. I know exactly which one you're talking about. That's why you're talking about the two people being interviewed.
Yeah, the guy in the background.
The guy in the background floats by and he's like in an S shape, blatantly on a harness.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And I'm just like, how did you let that through? Like, how? How? You know, it's like, to me, it's like, how did you not catch that? And I guess you're right. They're all, to them, the whole thing looks like it should.
Yeah. The whole thing is done on harnesses, therefore you're not going to spot one thing that looks... Obviously they are, because they're looking for it. But to them, when they were doing it, they're like, no, that looks all right. He looks like he's flying. But then to us, we go, look at that. What a joke.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I show people that clip, and they're like, yeah, so? I'm like, yeah, so?
Yeah,
I mean,
cognitive
one of the
dissonance,
problems-
cognitive dissonance means that they will make the excuses in their minds because to them it's still real. Yeah, that's just he just happens to be floating by, looking like he's in a harness, but he's still floating.
But you guys realize that even if something like that goes mainstream, even if NASA turned around and said that the Earth was flat, people are still not going to get it. They're still not going to believe it.
Yeah.
No, I think they
they're
will
gonna be
believe it.
like-
I think if NASA come out and said it, I think they'll be like, oh, it was flat all this time. Okay. If Obama said it, if the TV said it, they'll believe it. As long as the TV says it.
We might have to have a group discussion with a hacker in Lithuania. I know. we can make the TV do some things. We can make the TV do some things if that's all it's going to take.
Okay, all right. Let's have a hypothetical. Let's have a hypothetical. Just say, in the next few weeks, yes, they're going to just come out and just tell us. So it's on the news. It's on everywhere. Everywhere. They're just going to come out and tell us, look, we made a mistake. It is flat. All right. Hypothetical. Now what?
They're so zombified that it's going to fly right past them. They're going to be like...
They'll be like, yeah, but where's my Xanax?
Yeah.
They're going to be like,
that's funny, where's my... Yeah, that's interesting, but where's my Xanax?
Yeah, so point being, what's the point of waking up people to it in the first place if we already know?
I guess that is a good point.
Say that again?
I don't know.
What's the point, Haunted? What's the point of waking up people to it? If we can use our imaginations and come up with a pretty good conclusive outcome as to what it would look like.
I think because the broader
what's the point of waking
is
up people to it?
because the point is that they shouldn't be waiting for a TV or a government or someone to be telling them that. They should be doing it on their own. And this is what me and Haunted started off talking about, is that people have to go through this journey on their own. You can't just smack them in the face with 200 proofs and then just say, okay, you're done. So I think the whole point would be like, we're trying to get people to not just see the TV and accept that as what reality is. So even if the TV were to do that and say, oh, the earth is now flat, if people just listen to the TV and take that at token faith without doing any investigation or questioning, well, then it's no different than the TV tells them it's a globe. They're still in that mindset of letting someone else discern their reality for them. So I think people need to find it on their own.
Earlier, remember I was talking about how people need to become dangerous. People need to start changing. You need to start educating people on how they need to change the way they think. Stop taking information. What?
Yeah, that's a battle with that. Like, can we really?
If people could change the way they think about things and process information and not keep taking other people's word for things, then you're on to something. That way they can do their own research on things. And if people respected themselves, believed in themselves a little bit more, they would believe the information that they come across. They would believe they wouldn't believe assumptions. They would believe hypothesis and outcome of experiments and things like that. But people are so quick to take the media, what the TV says, on faith and put it out as fact. That's the issue here. Even when it comes to flat Earth too, there are people in this who will take whatever anyone says on faith. And if we have a world full of flat earthers, it's going to be the same thing as the world we have now.
Yes.
Because we'll have a world full of flat earthers that don't know why the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
And right now we have a situation where the people think the world is a globe and they don't know why it's a globe. So no one's going to know anything until they start going out and getting the information themselves and respecting themselves enough to care.
I've got an analogy,
which obviously you do.
I've got an analogy which would be
Nathan.
close to what you're describing if people were to find out on TV, which is that you've got that scene in The Matrix where Neo actually comes out of the Matrix and he's in a pod and looks around him and realizes the reality that he's in. Well, having it told to you on TV would be akin to Neo still strapped into the Matrix. He hasn't burst out of the bubble. He hasn't realized the situation he's in. He's just inside the Matrix being told
that he's in
the Matrix. Yes, exactly. You're in a Matrix. Am I really? Oh, right. But then you carry on. You still do your job in the Matrix, not realizing you're sat in a little bubble and you're not doing your job.
Okay, so you're saying, so in other words, you're saying it's a better idea for it to be a slow process. And,
definitely.
And most definitely.
Yeah. Well, no,
unfortunately, people have to break out of that bubble, and that's not an easy thing to do. Breaking out of that bubble and looking around and realizing that you're in a world of deception is that paradigm break, is that thing that's left people fractured. So it's even for people who are ready to do it and have done it, it's still, and we see this, we started off talking about it, left with people who are broken and they don't know how to replace their reality. And therefore, they start to question things that perhaps they shouldn't be questioning. Like you say, people's gender identity, things that are just farcical to question. But people go to the nth degree questioning absolutely everything because suddenly their world's broken. And that's for people ready. So you imagine Joe Schmo, who's just watching his TV, he's watching his soap operas, he's happy, he's moaning about the fact that he's not getting to watch his football live because the wife doesn't want it on, or whatever. And that guy gets told that the Earth is flat and has his paradigm completely broken and that everything around him is a lie. He might just pick up a massive machine gun and go they live on everyone. And
you might as well have given him 10 strong hits of LSD for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to be able to cope. It would break people far worse. And I don't know if it would break into complete chaos.
Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's exactly what they need.
But the whole point of this is to keep us under control. I think, again, in terms of they wouldn't say it was flat. They're already trying to skew some of these things into parallel universes. So it'd be a different phrasing of how our reality works. It wouldn't just be the case that we don't live on a globe anymore. It'd be the case that we live in, like the Rick and Morty examples are coming from true science. They're saying that there's multiple dimensions. Well, that will be how they present it. Parallel universes will be how they spin it out.
With all this, so that the flat Earth movement, what if, another hypothetical, just using our imaginations here, what if the government finally say, look, let's just tell them. Let's just tell them. And they've got a whole strategy behind it too. Let's just tell them the truth. Just tell them.
Why should we believe anything?
Because that is a possibility. Pardon me?
I would say you have no credibility. So if you're going to come out and now if you're coming to me and telling me it's flat, now I'm going to question that because I don't believe anything you say. You know what I mean?
But all right, but hold on. I'll take it a step further. Hypothetically, it is flat. This is just a hypothetical. Hypothetically, it is flat. Hypothetically, they know it's flat. Hypothetically, they come out and just say, look. So if we're going to be stuck with look, we already know it's flat. So if they come out and say, look, it is, we made a massive mistake. Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't think that does us any good because the people are still stuck in the mindset of having to be told what their reality is. They're not. We're out here trying to figure it out. They're sitting waiting for a guy in a suit to tell them either or. So right now they're told by the guy in a suit it's a globe. If tomorrow the guy in a suit tells them it's flat, they didn't change anything about themselves. They didn't change the way they think. So nothing around us is going to change if 99%, oh, well, it's flat. Well, maybe some other things will come from that, but we still have 99% of the people listening to a guy in a white suit to get their reality. And that's a problem.
It's not
Well,
the
we
information
gotta think.
so
Go ahead,
much as
Hunter.
it is how you go about getting the information. That's what I'm trying to stress here.
And I totally get
People
that.
need to
I totally
change
get that. But
how they go about.
strategically, if you guys are correct and we gain more knowledge by doing it slowly, they might think, bang, let's tell them real quick. Because if they're going to learn
now
a
I
lot
see the
more
point you're
by
making. What you're saying is
okay,
the
good.
divide and conquer comes into play, because if you can just completely flip, you know, we're at war with Eurasia. Now we're not at war with Eurasia. They're our allies. It's that sort of scenario. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly where I'm going with this, where they strategically realize, oh shit, that if they wake up slowly, they become too conscious. They start figuring out their own magic and their biological technology.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right, and I think they are doing that, Helena. I think that's exactly what they're doing.
Oh, okay. So they would come out and kind of say the Earth is flat. You guys don't need to look. You don't need to introspect. You don't need to. Everything's okay. You guys can calm down. You don't need to.
Yeah, they won't say flat.
Okay. I misunderstood what you're saying.
It won't be flat Earth.
And I hope I didn't just give them an idea. And I hope I didn't just give them an idea, you know?
It's already. I think it's already on the cards. I think they've already making the transition from the macroscopic to the microscopic anyway. So if you think about it, we all now want to go out to space. I know we don't, but you know what I mean. Just for this conversation, we all want to go out and travel and see the vastness of our universe. Well, that's pretty difficult to actually fake and forge if we can't do that. You know, we physically can't do it. There's only so much up. So what else can you control? Well, big machines that fly out into the ether. Well, other people might want to make big machines that also fly into the ether. Let's make a massive machine that looks at things really small that nobody's ever going to be able to replicate and reproduce, and then tell them that that's where their universe comes from and that's how existence comes from. And then you get things like the God particle. You know, they're already tying it in. You've got Shiva outside CERN. So eventually, in my view, they will do exactly what you're describing, Helena, but they won't call it flat Earth. That's already been, you know, that terminology is stigmatized. It'll be a parallel universe. You know, it'll be multi-dimensional universes.
Or it'll be all virtual reality or something.
Or simulation reality.
Simulation, yeah.
I mean, simulation, in my view, might be the one they most likely go with, because it's completely undebunkable. You know, you can't debunk that one. It's why I got so angry about it 2 years ago when I did not first came across it, because I came across it in like 2005 and, you know, read all about it and took it into consideration and then discounted it. So then when I came to Flat Earth and saw that people were punting out this shitty old theory that was way old for simulation, I was like, I understood already it was completely undebunkable. You know, that was, you know, I knew that, but it outraged me. I'm like, this is nonsense. This is complete nonsense. We are real. You know, So to postulate this and put this out there is just playing into their hands, because it gives us a completely new paradigm, but one that we can't debunk, we can't investigate, we can't, you know.
Simulation theory is unfalsifiable.
That's the word, unfalsifiable. Correct.
I think strategically, again, this is so hypothetical, but they're going to, they're going to have to, if it gets too big, they're going to have to just co-opt it very quickly and admit it, and just admit it. They're going to be honest. I reckon they're going to be honest in the sense where they're going to tell us that their agenda for doing it, like you were saying before, Critical, if they come out and say it, then you're going to start questioning if it is flat. My hypothetical was, no, it is flat. We know it is. They know it is. What I'd be suspicious of is why they've
Do you not think they've already done that? I think they've already done that. I mean, if you look at the past, you say, well, how was Flat Earth? It's never gone away. It's always just been kept under control. So then you look at the controlled opposition, who we all Earth Society, and see their rhetoric and how they put their false information in. So then you go, well, what have we got now? Who's the most popular YouTuber in Flat Earth? Eric Debay. Well, what pattern is he following? Well, he's got the new, revised, shiny version of the Flat Earth Society. What else does he do? He puts out narratives that are false. You go, and you've even talked about it at the beginning of this show. People who will repeat what he says, not only misquote him, but the thing he's saying in the first instance isn't correct. It's from Robotham. Rowbottom being the guy who did it 100 years ago, and
Yeah.
all of the cracks that he exposed. Maybe he was controlled, maybe he wasn't. We don't know. But the reality is, the things that he exposed had the heliocentric smear of bullshit put over the top of them. You know, let's debunk all of these things that people have found flaws with, and then write the book on it. Because then when anybody brings them up again, we go, "Ah, no, we've already got a debunking for that." Well, Eric Dubay parrots all of it, and all of it has been long covered with that heliocentric smear of bullshit. So what a nice way to rehash that nicely investigated and debunked way of presenting this theory. Well, you just put it out again. Put it out in the same way.
Yeah.
Tart up the
Yeah,
old
but
ways that you controlled it. Easy.
And attach a nice little
I-
shill list to it too.
Yeah, and then accuse everybody who's actually genuine of being a shill. You know,
Yeah.
simple. The only non-shill, according to Eric Dubay, is him.
Yeah. That's when I stopped watching Eric Dubay. When Eric Dubay was asked, "Hey, are there any other YouTube channels we can check out?" and
Nope.
he couldn't name a single solid, not a single one, not ODD, not more, nobody. I was like, "Yep, sorry. See you later, buddy. Take your ego to the door and get the fuck out of here." You know.
Yeah, so by you stating that, Nathan, you're saying it's already done. No, I've got a vision of people are going to turn on the TV. I don't watch TV. Turn on the TV, and the friendly newscasters are going to tell you the latest report from NASA that they found that it actually has been flat and it was flat. And they've made a mistake. They're going to have really good public relations related, really good spin doctors, the whole thing.
Yeah, NASA is
And
the biggest PR machine, the most slick
yeah,
PR machine.
you're going to come out with a really good reason why it was seemed to be a ball and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, oh, it is flat. Everyone, you're going to talk to your neighbor. Did you hear the Earth is actually flat? And they won't do the work. And it's a race. It's a race because don't you guys wonder? Like I always think, where's this going? Like I'm always trying to analyze where's this going? Where's it going to go? Because we know that I know that there's many timelines, there's many directions things can go. And I'm always curious as to where this flat Earth situation is going to go. And they've got something planned. They've got something going.
So it sounds like you've already bought into it, though. You said there's many timelines, there's many ways this will go. Well, that's a narrative from the mainstream.
Oh, it might not, Nathan. It might not happen. You might not switch on the TV and they're not smiling, saying, "Oops, NASA made a little mistake." That might not happen. But anything's possible. Let's face it.
Yeah, I just think they've
Don't
been
you expect
experimenting
CP
with alternative paradigms for a while. You know, you look at Back to the Future, and it was a time traveling reality that I think they were experimenting with to see how people accepted it. Now we're on to, like I've said it already, Rick and Morty, and all Rick and Morty are doing is taking what the current scientists are looking at in theory and putting it out there in cartoon format so that it can be visualized by the masses. Yeah, and that they've said, I've got quite hooked on Rick and Morty, not the cartoon, but the ideas behind it and how it's developed. And it seems to me that they've said no more time travel. Time travel is not something we want to put out into our current narrative. And Rick and Morty is based on the time traveling duo from Back to the Future. That's who their basis character is. But all they're doing is putting out these narratives. And the phrase when you said, there are many timelines and it's just like the future's not set sort of thing. But that in its phrasing is definitely a mainstream way of making people look at things. The alternate possibilities, the alternate futures, and the alternate pasts. That's how they want us to view things. And this is what I've taken from Flat Earth. It's all about the moment. There is only now. You can only do in the moment. The past and the future, that's controlled by the historians and the spin doctors and the wordsmiths. But they're not real. Those aren't real things. They are representations, cartoons, in literal terms, because there is only now. So the idea of changing the past, changing the future, changing your dimension, I don't buy any of that. Not at all.
I've got
You
a
can
question.
only remember
I've got
the
a
past,
question.
and you can only imagine the future.
Yeah, imagine the future. I've got a question for you, gentlemen, right? I'm very curious. I'll ask you first, Nathan, and I'd like to ask Critical and Haunted. How did were you always like this as a child? Like, did you have this kind of third eye as a child, or did you just figure this stuff out a couple of years ago, or have you always had an inkling? And I'm not just
Well, I've
talking
always
about
been
I'm not just
critical.
talking about flat Earth. Yeah, I'm not just talking about flat Earth either, by the way. The fact that you got such good critical thinking skills and logical and reasonable and rational. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I can give it a flat Earth example of from when I was a kid and I had first started the explanation of gravity. And a few people have got similar stories to this. But I remember my folks used to live in Birmingham at the time, and they had the back garden with these hills, and I was standing out there swinging a bucket around and thinking, the explanation for gravity doesn't make any sense. This bucket's sticking, the water's sticking in because there's something stopping the water flying off on the outside of this bucket, and thinking that doesn't make any sense. But like everybody, you put it to the back of your mind because you assume as a child that people aren't out to deceive you and lie to you. Now you think back on Santa Claus and you think that that's just conditioning for being lied to your whole life.
Yeah.
I've been inquisitive since I was a kid. I've always wanted to know why things were doing what they do or how things work. I never really got the heliocentric model. Just something never really stuck. I think it was because of the movies where they showed like a planet and they'd have like a spaceship flying towards the planet, right? And it's going to be closer and closer and closer. And then it would cut to like flying over the ground. And I was always saying to myself, how the hell did that happen? They were just heading straight for the ground, which would look to us, first of all, we'd be on the side of it, like somehow perpendicular without falling, falling down to the bottom of it. Because of gravity, idiot. And we would perceive a spaceship flying directly into the ground, but they always cut to like the perspective of a craft flying over the terrain, like hovering over it and flying in that direction. Kind of like Star Wars, where he's got to shoot he's got to go in the ravine and shoot the whatchamacallit, like the air shaft. But other than that, that shit just didn't. I just kind of ignored it.
Well, I was like when I was young. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I wouldn't go as far as to say as like Eric Dubay says, like he knew the heliocentric model didn't work when he was a kid.
I don't buy anybody that says that.
I don't know if I'm saying that. I mean, I'm not going to go out and say that, but I didn't know what heliocentric meant.
I had problems. I remember when I was young and the teachers were explaining water and gravity. And I remember like thinking to myself, well, first of all, that doesn't make any sense. Just because two molecules come together doesn't mean that now suddenly they should have a magical force to curve water around a ball. But I hate to bring it up again, and we always use it, and I'm so tired and tropey of using the Matrix, but I'm going to use it again only because it has personal meaning for me. When I first heard that, I was young when the Matrix came out. I think I was like 12 or 13 maybe. When I heard the line Morpheus saying to Neo, he's like, you can never put your finger on it, but you always knew something was wrong. A splinter in your mind. When I heard that saying, when I heard that, even at 12 years old, when I heard just those three words, splinter in your mind, it described perfectly, because for me, I never knew. I never cared flat, space, this or that. But for me, it was always like something in the background. There's something in the background that just isn't right. And even to this day, I still don't even think flat or round has much to do with it. There's still something there, like a splinter. It's just like eating away. Like something isn't what you're being presented with. Isn't all that it's just not. Not only is it not all that out there, it's a facade. It's something that you're looking at. And I don't even know how to put it into perspective, like in terms of words or.
No, you've done it perfectly. I couldn't have put it better myself. Me and Helena had exactly the same conversation.
Isn't that strange? Isn't that amazing, Nathan? I was just about to say that when I was on Nathan's show, I described it just like you just said, critical.
That's crazy.
Just like that.
Just that splinter in your mind, I guess,
Yep. And I got to say, the first time I heard about flat Earth, I felt like that was the splinter. It was that, and then everything else, because I was already onto most other things. I was already onto most of it, and I'm sure there's more. But yeah, that's amazing. But go ahead. You were giving me goosebumps when you were saying that.
Isn't it funny, critical, what I was saying earlier about the
Yeah,
Matrix
yeah,
references?
yep. And that's exactly why I wasn't going to say it. I was like, son of a bitch.
And it's not, I'm not making fun of anybody, but I was just saying earlier, like, why is everyone always, I mean, I get the Matrix, the movie and everything.
Well, it's a good question.
So many people
Haunted.
use the
Why?
So many people use the Matrix as an example.
No, we do need a different. We need a different go-to. We need like a different go-to movie, man, or something. A go-to play or a Shakespeare play, something. I don't know. I know exactly what
I see
Hamlet.
I see the Matrix always used when it's conspiratard time.
It's like you can play
Ghost in a Shell. It's it's based on a different movie that was a year earlier, or maybe a couple of years earlier. Sorry, called Ghost in a Shell, an anime movie. That's what it's based on.
Very good movie. Very good movie.
There's also a movie named Ghost in the Machine too, for anybody out there. But yeah, you know what? You could play a drinking game. Like, let's pull up let's pull up the most purple pill video we can find, and every time they make a Matrix reference, everybody has to do a shot. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
That's
Smashed.
What's a purple pill movie? What's that mean? Purple pill movie?
Purple, like, you know, they're not quite blue pillars and they're not quite red pillars.
Like blue pill. Yeah, like red pill would mean like you've taken the red pill, you're awoke. Blue pill means you're normed out, you listen to everything the government tells you. And purple pill would be like your David Icke, your Alex Jones, you know, your people that are like, oh, well, they faked the space program. I mean, they faked the moon landings, but that's because they're really in secret concentration with reptilians and there's a Draco star system. Like, that's purple pill crap. Like, David Wilcock is like king of purple pill.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he'll talk about the power of synchronicity, but he won't talk about Earth and how you perceive it.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't like flat Earth. Oh no. That upsets him. It's the only thing I've ever seen him actually, besides the death threats.
Well, you got to give
really,
the guy a break.
Upsets him.
He hasn't really figured out how to, he hasn't really figured out how to, you know, put his frozen Atlantean aliens into the flat Earth. Once he figures that out, he'll be on board. We'll give him a nice little Atlantean.
I thought you were going to say
that is the biggest purple problem.
Frozen finger on it.
There's a huge problem. David Icke probably is the best example. So you can't really transpose his ideas into a flat Earth. You know, if you've got spaceships in the moon and all this kind of stuff, that necessitates heliocentricity. You have to have a circle in the moon for that to work. A circle in the sun.
You've got to have a reptilian planet, you know.
I think David Icke gauges his stories.
He does
on crowd response.
Yes.
You know, whatever the crowd likes, whatever they respond to, whatever, like, people probably do research, market research for his books, and like whatever people call in and write emails about. Oh, I like this part in your book, the Moon Matrix or whatever.
That and the Moon Matrix came out right around the time that simulation theory was getting big. So he just kind of plays on his little nuances, you know. Yeah,
and he's a terrible talker too. He's a terrible orator. I can't listen to him with the uhs and his pauses and his voice. He looks like a reptilian out of anybody.
He talks for hours and hours.
And that stomach, like, man, he's just not something you want to look at. He's got crinkled fingers. He's all like this, and he looks like he's pregnant. He's got bashed in fingers, and that mullet hair that he's got.
I mean, maybe you guys don't understand. Do you guys know about the Wogan thing? For me, David Icke was, you know, I remember David Icke when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, because he came onto a TV show in Britain called Wogan, talk show, sit down couch style, you know. Like
is this when he was claiming he was God?
Yeah, second coming of Jesus. Yeah, he basically claimed to be the Messiah live on air on the Wogan show, and from that point on, he was absolutely ridiculed and demonized in the UK. But to my knowledge, you know, it's like a footnote for you guys, but for me, it was like the entire nation turned on David Icke and just completely ridiculed him. You know, he became a laughing stock overnight.
Is that why he did most of his stuff in the US?
Yeah. In Britain, to this day, if you mention David Icke, someone will chuckle and say, oh, didn't he think he was God?
Oh, wow. He's still a laughing. Wow. That's crazy.
He's he's still definitely. If you mention David Icke in Britain, well, maybe if you talking to a 16-year-old, they wouldn't even know who you're talking about. But you know what I mean. To most
Yeah.
adults in Britain, they would know David Icke as the ridiculed person from the Wogan Show.
Oh my god, that's funny.
Wasn't he a football player or a soccer player?
He was a soccer player, yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a commentator. He was a sports commentator.
Oh, he was. I thought he was a player.
No, he was a player. I'm pretty sure he was a player.
Okay.
You sure you're not thinking of Gordon Ramsay?
He still is a player.
No, I thought it was Ike. He had a mild stint as or a brief stint as a forward or something like that on one of the teams.
Yeah, because I remember on that TV show, I'm pretty sure they were like, oh, former football star David Icke now thinks he's the reincarnation of Christ or something.
But he had an on-air blowout, didn't he, or a freak out, a nervous breakdown or something like that. It actually happened on air.
Wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
Wouldn't surprise me, no.
Dude, it's funny.
Because one of his books, he talks about how he became enlightened, like the power of something came into him, and he had his hands outstretched on a beach.
You know what would be interesting? It would be interesting to have somebody confront him on the street and ask him about flat Earth.
He's already addressed it.
He has a video where he's talking about it.
Yeah, he gets around it pretty cool. He gets around it. He says a lot without saying much.
Could be a hexagon. It could be anything.
Oh,
yeah, that's right.
Skirting the issue, kind of.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a quick question too. So, you talk about critical thinking. That's what I do a lot of it. With David Icke, about him being enlightened and awakened. What does that actually mean? What does being in your real life? What does that mean? You got crinkled fingers. You look unhealthy. What?
I've heard you bring this up
before,
Helena, and it's a powerful point. It's a powerful point. I heard you bring this up with Lickety too, and it's like, well, you're sitting here and you're claiming to be woke and you know all this about the legal system, and you were saying you look like, well, you didn't say this, Helena, but for me, I'm listening to the guy talk. I'm like, first of all, you're doped out of your fucking mind. I can hear that just by you talking. Second of all, she's asked you like 10 to 20 times how this has made your life better, and you can't answer. You can't answer the question. So that's a powerful question, Helena. I think we all need to ask ourselves that.
Yeah, but I think well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but certainly for me, as a flat earther, I've said it already on this show. You know, I feel like being able to be critically thinking about things and looking internally about what I can do with my life. It almost sounds narcissistic, but it isn't.
No way. It's not even close to narcissistic. Your life, our lives are everything. Our backyards, taking care of our backyards, metaphorically speaking, is everything. That's not. I don't think that's narcissistic at all. But
I don't mean in the terms that you and I know. I mean for the audience who thinks that narcissism is just some people who are more interested in themselves than anybody else, and that's the only.
Having a beautiful home life is like a dream for most people, because what's going on behind closed doors on the ground level, I'll talk ground level now, what happens behind closed doors, I'm pretty sure isn't good.
Yeah.
And people focus on the government when really you've got to clean up your own fucking backyard. Excuse my French, right?
It's like the Illuminati, and they're beating their wife. You know what I mean? They're ranting about the Illuminati, and they're using heroin and beating their wife and like taking shit care of their body. You know what I mean?
All that stuff critical, and that's the stuff that's where I've been delving lately, and on my show as well. And so you guys, and I'm always curious about other people that I know that are enlightened and awakened, such as yourselves. And I always wonder what their lives are like their actual real lives. I mean, you don't have to disclose any of that now. I'm not asking you guys, but I do get curious. I wonder what their real lives are like. I wonder what it's like. The people that are around them, is it hard for them? Do they have like-minded people that it's a symbiotic relationship? You've got people in your life that they give to you, you give back to them, you get it, they get it, and you've got a really good home life. Or, are we sort of just wandering, and it's like we find each other online, other amazing souls and minds online. And that thus far has been my experience. It's online, but you people exist. And to me, for now, that's enough for me to know. For now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also can be a false sense of security sometimes because online you can give up more information with less consequence because you can always just hang up the call, that sort of thing, or disappear. Or if you're someone who didn't show their face, you can always disappear. But I think that people exist like this in real life as well. Maybe not to this level, but it comes down to confidence and security. Insecure people are going to keep themselves. They're probably not going to look at this kind of information, and if they do, they're not going to tell anyone about it.
I'm gonna have to go, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey Nathan, it was good talking to you, brother.
Yeah,
Be
Nathan,
safe,
thanks for
man.
coming on, man.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Take it easy, Nathan.
Speak to you soon.
Peace,
Nathan,
peace.
I got a Yeti, by the way.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it sounded good. Must admit.
Yeti
It's a
Club.
blue one.
Yeti Club.
Yeah, I'm part of the Yeti Club.
Sponsored by
Hey,
Blue.
I'm not in. Am I in the Yeti Club? Am I in that club? What's going on?
You got to
We'll
get a
send you
microphone.
We'll send you one.